solution. All right, everyone. I want to thank you all so much for joining us on this wonderful Thursday for some more D&D right here on Lionhead Gaming. And since it's Thursday, you know what that means. It's time for some more Song of Rapture. We're all here. We're ready to go ahead and get started. So without further ado, Monsieur Omen, do you have for us tonight?
Last left our valiant vanguard, they had found themselves in a strange new world, ever so close to their own, but separated by an unseen veil. Having gathered a first taste of what it means to be beyond their home in a world where life abounds, both in good spirits, but it seems where they are now, in morose, sorrowful, and even violent and temperamental spirits. But what exactly transpired last session and what adventures they had gone on is not really my story to tell, so could someone regale us on what happened on the last episode of Song of Rapture? Ooh?
I didn't have anything written down, so.
Last time on
Hey.
Song of Rapture.
Oh
About
no,
to
we don't have a recap.
be attacked by a cat here. We made our way into the Fey Wilds as we transposed ourselves through the strange lake entrance after defeating the strange mass of plant life that seemed to have swelled up and overgrown in its heart, sort of messing up the magic a little bit, disrupting the magical mechanism that seemed to keep the portal in check. But once we repositioned the little magical mirrors that seemed to activate the magic, defeated the thing clogging up the works, we started to make our way in. But not before we had an uninvited guest of Persephone's father that seemed to have used a bit of magic to track her down and even bring himself before us, trying to stop where we were going, but with a little bit of interruption in the middle, we were able to get away from him, but he quickly followed. And we found ourselves in a strange wood in the Feywild, somewhere within the Unseelie Court, the darkened places of the Feywild, the places where the wilds had grown wilder, something that were not so hospitable to, well, somewhat of intruders. We decided with our good little guide's help here, not Penelope, Calliope, said that the best way and how she usually got around was up through the tree branches, dancing far up in the sky to try to avoid the sort of nasties that crawled within the dirt underneath or within the roots. So we took her advice, climbing high up, some of us taking our flying carpets, some of us just climbing, some of us having a harder time than others, but all in all, we're all pretty fit individuals or have some little magic devices to help us, and eventually we made our way up into the tree branches. After a bit of meandering here and there, trying to be quiet, thankfully aided by a bit of Persephone's magic, we made quite far without really disturbing anything about us. With Calliope continuing to warn that sometimes the trees, they like to sleep, and if we wake them, they might be a little bit perturbed about our existence, which once we got to a certain place where it seemed like the tree had large branches sprouting out upwards towards us, that we had to sort of sneak our way by to continue on our path on this gigantic tree branch that seemed to be interwoven in between other trees, creating somewhat of a path. Some of us scooted our way through without jostling a single branch. Some of us a little bit more haphazard about it, but still making our way through. But when it came to getting Persephone's father, Kalen, across, we noticed that he not quite used to venturing out in the world to putting his mettle to the test. Persephone tried to help him a bit with magic, as plummeting himself forward through her secret ways, magical teleportation, but it seemed to might have caught him off guard a little bit, as with one little stumble, a knock of a branch, a twisting of the plant life around us, the tree that which we sat on seemed to spring to life, awaking, and with the gigantic twist of its massive limb on which we stood, some of us maybe seeing what was about to come, or maybe just be able to react fast enough, were able to leap to safety, but others of us, as the limb untwined from another, seemed to go taut and then fling us forward, making a good handful of us fly through the air, very quickly plummeting down to the forest bottom. But seemed like Swift Hollow had a little trick up her sleeve, something that she might have been working on, or something that just came by accident. Small bit of magic, reaching out, and it seeming like twisting and reforming the plant life around this place, actually created small little parachutes for our friends that were plummeting to their deaths. And with that, to safety, they slowly descended. But they were descending, so we had to chase after them as we all met back up on the tree floor. Our path a little bit disrupted, but some of us that arrived there earlier than others found themselves wrapped up in strange, what Tamar Khan warned of before, something invisible, something that was there and yet not there, that treated itself like strange spider webs of sorts. And we were also greeted by a strange voice and a little man of darkened horns that seemed to have the form of a satyr, although his features were a little bit more wicked looking than some we might expect. Long fangs growing out of his mouth and this strange whited out eyes, as it seemed like he invited us to a game with riddles. But there was something wrong about this creature. His mind seemed to slip from here and there, not even particularly remembering who we were from one moment to the next, sometimes thinking he knew, sometimes couldn't remember how we even arrived. But thankfully, some quick wit, we were able to get rid of some of the riddling nuisance in front of us, which each time it seemed like some little magic in this area faded. It seemed like whenever we got a riddle right, his mind shifted. And eventually, he even gave us a gift for completing his riddles and letting most of us go. But then his mind shifted one last time, seeing us standing there holding his cloak that of course he would not give away, so he must have stolen it. And that threw him into a little bit of a rage. And also, that's when his unseen friends appeared. Gigantic spiders that were there and yet not there descended upon the group. But with a little bit of fisticuffs here and there, with some smacking about, as cut them down pretty easily. Some of us taking some bites, but not too bad. We were able to land one final little smack on the side of our little friend's noggin, putting him to sleep as he slumped to the ground. We freed ourselves, and Samantha actually had words to speak to the creature. Seems like with a bonk on the noggin, some of his sense seemed to have returned. Maybe not all, though. Creature of the Unseelie Court, tainted, changed for who knows how long he's been here. But it seems like Samantha was able to convince the creature that it would serve maybe best in his interest if he would listen to what Samantha had to say. Not just now, but in the future, if she might call upon him. And with that, he somewhat agreed. What form that might take seems strange enough, but we've seen Persephone pull creatures from the Feywild before. Maybe this creature has the same ability. But with that, we asked where the next path was. Calliope said that it was probably just on the forest floor from here on out. It wasn't too much further away, but our path up in the sky seemed to have been cut off for now. The trees now awoke into our presence. And we set off once again to try to find wherever we're going.
Very well done. Tamar Khan, give yourself some DM inspiration.
Yay. We got used to that.
Yeah. Good stuff. As indeed we return to following the valiant vanguard, still deep in the thicket of the gnarlwood forest, a terrain, an area held within the grasp of something known as the Unseelie Court. You guys find yourselves now wandering back through the depths of this forest, no longer upon this edge of a great marsh where your feet were sinking into deep water. Instead, you're now walking across what looks like overgrown grass, not lush and beautiful like you'd expect in an open, untouched wilderness, but instead sort of twisted and knotted, as if whether some horrible gale had blown through and just disrupted all of the plant life, or maybe just the actions and footsteps of other creatures stomping their way through here had left lasting, one might even say, scars upon the shape of the land. As we'll return back to the forest where you guys are traveling. There we are. As you would have, once again, Calliope leading the way, I'm assuming with Tamar Khan, unless you guys want to shift your order in this, I'm assuming you're going from right to left. for a good old marching order.
Seems good. Yeah. Up in front, Kelpie's leading the way, but I'm just making sure that we don't get lost and keeping an eye out, just in case anything sneaks on by. If I do happen to see something out in front of us, see some tracks or something, I can go investigate while the rest of the party is catching up.
Perse is going to make her way towards the front because it sounded like Calliope was going to tell us about the storm matron.
Oh yeah, it certainly seemed last left off. You'd mentioned a name that she kind of found familiar. Are you really telling me you haven't heard the story of the Storm Matron? I thought you knew quite a bit of Fey life stories.
I know a lot of Fey tales told by the Sisters Three, but I'm not very familiar with the storm matron.
Oh, well, it might be because it's kind of an old story. Might take some time to tell. If you'd like, I could tell you, but time may pass quite quickly by the time we're done. As you guys will be traveling, unless there's anything else you guys want to do while you're traveling. Basically, her telling her story might take up some travel time. So giving you guys a time to basically say do what you need to do.
Just keeping an eye out, tracking ahead. If she wants to take some time to talk, I'll be the lookout, make sure that nothing's sneaking up on us while she's talking.
Just get comfy in the on the back half of the flying carpet and just keep my ears open for the story. But yeah, I'm pretty much good unless someone has something they want to talk about. I am curious.
All right then. Seems like everyone's all comfy and ready to listen. Oh, been quite some time since I told stories. I do like to though. I get a little lost in it. So if I start to meander, don't be afraid to tell me to climb up or something. You know. Well,
Oh.
let's see.
God.
What's up?
I do over the course of this, because it takes like an hour, I think. I will switch attunements from the Wand of Lightning Bolts to the Phantom Thread.
Sure. That works.
Making me play by your fucking rules. The switching.
My question is, you layering your cloaks in? Just for visual
course,
sake.
baby.
What does that look like? What does it look like? You're wearing like the long flowing dark cloak with the silken threads over it? How are you wearing these two cloaks at once?
Oh yeah, so sort of getting a sense from the magic itself that it sort of tries to protect me. I would take off the black cape and put this over top of the ward of Edicus. I don't know. Why couldn't you pick something that
Ecdysis.
I'd put it over top of the ward to have that abjuration magic closer at hand, and then put the dimension door shadow cloak on top.
Sure. All right. Okay. Spend some time connecting with that. You would find yourself not only strangely, this thing's light, but the way it moves. If you ever find yourself suddenly jostling or shifting, you'd feel a strange firmness as these thin, almost like air-like threads become stiff enough to maybe stop or block an attack. As well as maybe even guiding your movements. And other than that, you feel like maybe a moment you could call upon some magic inside. Maybe even slip between the worlds for a moment. Indeed. The depths of this forest, you would hear as Calliope begins to speak within the sound of the sort of chirping and even sometimes chattering and laughing of Fey life around you. You would sort of hear this like soft, somewhat familiar hum that just sort of builds as the wind starts to blow all around you guys. Soft gale at first. Occasionally, you'll be sort of beset. Maybe some of you, especially some of you with your new multiple cloaks, will feel like a sudden wind blow through the area, sort of lifting, not powerfully, but just enough to sort of like cause hair and loose clothing garments to rise and fall around you. As Calliope sort of begins her story. Quite a long time ago, longer than most people probably ever remember, there was a very powerful fae. Her name is, suppose it's been gone for so long, it's possibly been forgotten. People only really referred to her as the Storm Matron. She was very powerful, very well respected. She was beautiful and fair, but she Supposedly had quite a temper, like a wild maelstrom. Kind of befitting of your name, if you ask me. But supposedly, at her heart, not many people knew this, but she was a very kind and very gentle and loving soul. However, she rarely ever showed it, for it sounded like it believed if a queen had ever revealed her weakness to those who followed her, well, she might risk having which is hers be taken from her. So she always presented herself as the almighty storm matron, whose followers worshipped in reverence and fear. And it seemed it worked. All of her Fae did exactly what she said, in fear of invoking the wrath of the storm. But they say that among all the Fae who had ever revered and feared the Storm Matron, all those who had ever crossed her path, or possibly incurred her wrath, there was one in particular, a dark-eyed Fae from the far wilds, who wasn't afraid of her. One who knew of joy and revelry and mischief, and would come to entertain the Queen with all sorts of little games and activities, even if it made her very angry. But the Wrath of the Storm Matron never seemed to frighten the dark-eyed Fae. In fact, I heard he quite liked seeing that side of her. It is said that even though she looked very dangerous, he said he could see a look of a gentle spirit in the eye. And the Storm Matron had never experienced this before. Someone who enjoyed being around her, who saw right through her and her best at her worst. And eventually it seemed that through their time together, he had managed to reach her heart, her true nature, and brought forth a calm to this storm. It is such a lovely little story. Story about what lies at the heart of even the most powerful and intimidating of creatures. That even a terrifying queen can become gentle and kind. Or maybe it's not that. Maybe it's a story about the nature of the Fae, a life in constant flux and change, or how even a wrathful and menacing storm can become a calm and gentle breeze. But no matter its purpose, no matter its lesson, it seemed the same could be said of the dark eyed Fae. For you see, once he had the Queen's heart, the precious love of an Archfey, the dark eyed Fae stole away with it, vanishing from her kingdom and off into his home in the wilds. It seemed that his heart, the dark eyed Fae, was a thief. And so the trust of the Storm Matron was broken, having been betrayed by one of the Fae she allowed to become closest to her. Her whole glade billowed with a sorrowful storm as she wailed in sadness. Never again, she cried. Never again shall I trust myself to the mercurial heart of a Fae, untrue and unpure. And with her heart stolen, her essence left hollow, the storm matron herself broke, shattering into nothingness. Her form became a storm of sorrow and wrath that twisted a once very beautiful glade, a wonderful emerald forest, into a desolate gloom filled with remnants of loss and despair. Trust was broken, friendships dissolved, and the Fae who lived there became unruly rivals and lonely spirits. That place is where we are today. It twisted this lovely little place, a place I had never truly known in my time, into a gnarled wood. A tragedy the storm matron lived on in the window, formless yet formed, carried by this heartbreak rather, she suffered, and the heartbreak felt by those who hear her tale. The Fae came to call her the Queen of Air and Darkness. For wherever the wind carries this very sad song, the story that ties with it, her influence is certain to be at play. Kind of a sad story, isn't it?
Yeah.
So exactly, how does one steal a heart? Like physically, or
Probably. Just stuck his hand right in there or something. I don't know. How do you take hearts?
I mean, I don't. But that just seems.
Purse just like subtly kind of glances over her shoulder at the carpet when Caleb asks, "How do we take hearts?"
It seems rather disappointing, honestly. She was a mighty and powerful queen, and when she was betrayed, she did not seek revenge or vengeance. She simply let herself fade away into nothingness. Perhaps her power was overstated.
Could be. But they say that she's still around at times. It is the nature of the Fae, after all. Life begetting life. Constant cycle. The Archfey themselves are no different. You fall apart, you come back together. But, from what I know, Queen of Air and Darkness has fallen apart and come back together many times. I knew her very briefly as Etronas. Very, very briefly. Very short part of life. Uh, Very uncertain, very cautious with those who let come close to her. Very controlling of what she was willing to let go. She held on really tightly to things, trying to keep them from ever leaving her grasp. And until she realized as long as she held them, they would never stay. And then,
That makes sense.
but she's gone now.
So she's always been a queen and a lady, but do the spirits of Fae ever come back with a different identity? Because I met a lord who went by Othronus.
Sometimes, yeah, they are constantly changing faces and bodies, and sometimes you come back different. You know, like there was a farmer once. His name is Pigro. He was this tiny little man, lots of hair, loved to grow pumpkins and mushrooms. He's a very nice fellow. Constantly would let his life fall apart. He would get old and these things do, and sometimes they'd die. And he would feed his land, his body, and he'd come back and he'd do it all over again. He wouldn't always be the same person, but he'd always come back. And then one day someone stole one of his pumpkins and he tried to take it back and they killed him. It was so sad. And he came back so angry about being killed that he didn't come back as anything he used to be. He came back as something different. He was a scrumpy old man with a big red hat and he had a big old pitchfork and a sickle. And his first thing he thought when he was born was, "I'm going to kill that man who killed me." It The way that we come back, the nature of the Fae, as your friend might know, is life is endless. We come back, fall apart, return. Some of us don't always return, as you saw with the Will-O-Wisp. You get a little stuck, but you are always welcomed to change. Not always by your own volition. Sometimes you get really sad and you become back as something different, someone possibly sadder. Even if you don't remember who you used to be.
He he came back as like one of those little red cap people that lived on blood.
Oh, you met redcaps! Yeah, they're terrible people. They're really mean.
They're
born from
crazy.
They're very mean. Must have met a lot of angry Phalan. Oh,
Weird.
So they
Wait,
don't
so
even
can
gain
you
the
come?
benefits from learning from their past lives and mistakes.
sometimes they do. It's not always a choice. If someone thinks of something, they say very hard when they die. If a fake creature goes to their grave, falls apart with something in their mind, a goal or a dream, something they focus on, they come back. They might have a piece of it in them, but they won't always be the same. If I asked if I have ever died, no, I've never died. It seems terrible.
Isn't that like your
Sure.
whole thing, Tamarkan? You're like a cyclical creature, right? This is like the 80th Tamarkan?
But yes, to be reborn again, to live a life, to go away, but
But you
twice
don't
gone
remember
by.
your past lives, though.
No, no. Each one of us is created of the same thing, but not We are not one another. I am who I am. Unique, but made of the same materials, I suppose.
That is the nature of the Fae. This is not a land of death, and we are not the people of death, really. It is all about life making more life. All an endless cycle. I'm kind of excited for mine, but I don't really want to die. I like being alive, and I can already kind of change who I am right now. I can just become someone else if I want. Why do I need to die?
Has Queen Titania gone through the same thing?
No, she's
The-
very new.
She's new.
Very new.
Like
how
she died
new?
recently and came back as a new Queen Titania, or
It's the first time there's anything like her.
Interesting.
but you've been but she's been around for a long time, as we
A
would
summer
understand it, right?
matron. A summer matron has been around for a long time. But maybe she didn't have a physical form as Queen Titania. Does that sound right?
It totally sounds right.
But how did you come into being? Aren't you one
She,
of her
oh,
children?
yeah, she made me.
Yeah, she made
I'm
her.
a baby.
She made Calliope, Lucarin, and the Melancholy Prince
But how old
out
are
of
you,
her
Calliope?
different emotions.
I'm like, I don't count too much, like 200, maybe close to 300 years old.
Yeah, so that's not new as we would understand it.
I
But she
mean,
understands it as a fae.
It's
Yes.
very new in Fae lifetime, and even
I was just trying to
even in the course
confirm that
of
that
an
was the case.
but even in the course of an elf's lifetime, 200 years is still fairly young.
It's almost a fourth.
And speaking
How old
of
are you
failures,
guys?
though, some quite timeless. It all depends upon when you take the crown.
Will you ever make more fae, Calliope?
Possibly. I don't know. I don't really know how to do it. I've just kind of been enjoying my life so far. I like to wander. I like to see people how they act. I copy them. I don't know if I want to make anymore, but maybe one day.
Do you know what happened to the I guess the bad guy? The one that stole her
The
heart?
dark-eyed fae.
The dark-eyed fae. Did he actually have a name?
Most people just know him as the Dark-Eyed Fae. That's at least the stories. I only know of these stories. But Mother might know. She might remember that name.
I am curious to find out who it is that absconded with her love and then she found herself, it sounded like, not really being herself anymore.
Broken.
A shame, really. You should resolve yourself to, I don't know, do something about it.
Well, that would have been very nice. Would have probably made for a more exciting story.
That I can agree with. But you told it quite nicely.
Oh, why, thank you. I usually get lost in the details. Sometimes I'll hear how beautiful she is, and I'll start talking about the most beautiful things I'd ever heard in my life to try and make you understand how beautiful she is. Like, there are these flowers that grow in the moonlight grove that are so tall they reach the very skies, and they have such soft little petals that come down like hairs, all silvery. It almost looks like you're walking and dancing among all these tall, beautiful fae. But they're just flowers. That's all they do. They taste terrible.
Calliope, have the fae learned from the Storm Matron? Are several
And-
of them guarded now?
Well, not particularly. Most fake, it depends on their nature. Titania is quite open with much creatures. She loves to be loved and loves to love. It's all she does. She welcomes everyone into her kingdom. There are some, though, who might, whether the Storm Matron is a lesson or not, like to keep themselves quite guarded. I imagine the Dark-Eyed Fae doesn't like to let people know who he is. They don't even like to let people know his name. Even I don't know it. But you might find in these darker places those who might align themselves with him. He doesn't sound like a very good guy. And it seems like a place where not very good guys like to hang out.
Would you say that the Storm Matron sort of kept herself guarded before she met him, or just no one really wanted to approach her just because of how she was?
It sounded like it was her decision. It is a scary thing. She was a very kind soul, but she is afraid if people saw how kind she was, they would take advantage of her. She finally found one person she thought was worth trusting, and it did not work out.
That happens with nobility, where I'm from too.
Hmm. Nobody knows who he was. And Samantha
Don't
sort of
look
finds
at me.
herself deep in thought. I considered you for a moment. You were running away with some Fey Lord lady's heart. You little... well, pickpocket would be putting it lightly, but... no, there are other forces that are quite fond of secrets. But it's no matter.
So the Dark Eye Fae is still around in some form then, right? Has anyone ever tried to get the Storm Matron's heart back?
I'm not certain that most of my story is that she had her heart stolen. I don't even know if he still has it, if he's still around. Yeah, I still have it. It's a very precious thing.
Indeed. He also probably sees it as a trophy of his conquest.
Possibly
Might be
thieves
something
like
that he has to willingly give back. If it
thieves
is
like things.
more ethereal nature.
I cannot really say for certain. I hope somebody just took her heart out. I mean, that's how you take a heart, is it not?
That's certainly how I've taken two, now that I think about it.
Wait, two?
Wow.
Yes.
You're building a collection.
Which one are you misremembering, Persephone?
I remember Devora.
Yes, her heart is in
Wow.
my bag.
Wow, you're like a dark fate too. Quite the
But
mischievous
it's-
little thief.
You have
She-
no idea.
Well, see, she wronged me, Kellepy. That's the thing. See, this
What?
dark-eyed
Like
fae...
backwards from this story.
The dark-eyed fae took the Storm Matron's heart, and she should have taken his heart. Literally.
Should have taken his head.
No, that works too. And, the other heart I took was Obsidius's. She sort
Is
of
that
like...
what you're wearing around your neck?
She
that
cranes
makes
her neck forward a
sense.
little bit and shows you the pendant that's heart-shaped. I took his heart, ground it into dust, and formed it into a gem.
That's also a very sad story, but it sounds lovely, and it's a beautiful gem.
A sad story? No, it's one of great triumph.
Well, why don't you could tell it to me then? I want to hear your story about stealing a heart. This sounds very wonderful.
I could not only tell it to you, I could show it to you.
I would love to see it.
Perhaps
Can we
you're
watch it while we
wrong in
watch?
this place.
Oh, that's right, we're in a terrible forest right now. Don't worry, we're almost there.
Maybe when we make camp. Or if we're almost there, then that's even better.
Yes, you could see how your daughter fared off against a great and powerful red dragon, Lord Kellon.
I am curious to see how you would wish to show this event. Assuming through some form of... You're not going to reach into my mind, are you?
No, I wouldn't.
Not yet.
That's
Right.
what she's for, exactly.
Alright. Very well, I'll just do a show. Nothing else to do.
As we continue walking with the story fresh in Persephone's mind, she's just gonna grab onto her little amulet of reflection and open it and recall the face she hadn't seen in quite some time and see Nimini's in there and just pondering to herself if he was her and if he's still around and if he is and what's become of him these days.
Just staring at your little token. What's he look like, Persephone?
He has hair much like he has long hair similar to reminiscent of willow leaves. It's got that long flowiness to him, and his skin, it shifts depending on what season he's in. But Persephone remembers it being somewhat bark-like, but the thing she remembers the most about him is his eyes and how they reminded her of twilight, right when the sun was about to duck beneath the horizon. Her teacher used to call it the minute of magic, where the veils thinned and you can see Fey life resonate within the prime for just a moment.
All right.
Actually, that's light molecules interacting with gases in the upper atmosphere.
This is my fantasy world? Excuse me? And my fantasy boyfriend? Fuck off?
As
So
time
you're
would
saying
pass-
brown. Brown? We're saying brown. All right, good.
His hair was brown, his eyes brown. As time would pass, you'd find yourself wandering, thankfully, through a safe little crack in this forest, the path seeming to thin. Thankfully, this was not a path taken by horses, as you guys had once done many, many, many months ago in your travels. Nope, now you are in the depths of some great wild, thankfully sheltered by both the use of some magic as well as some of Calliope's guidance. I'd say Tamarkan, with your looking out, give me a survival check. Let's see what you
Oh.
get.
Yeah.
What do we see with your monkey eyes?
Hey. I would say along the path, ooh, that's pretty dang good. You would definitely notice some strange tracks. Of course, the signs of animal life, but many of them have been long since faded. You'd think that probably was some long scuffle, although again, with the state of the ground, time itself might be a little hard to tell. But there are some definite prominent steps, not directly on the path you're walking, but instead you might notice them like about 10, 15 feet away from you between these thickets of trees. You'd notice patches of grass in some areas that have been completely like pulverized and flattened into a great degree. You'd think like the size of you almost think like a person was like laying in the grass, like a deer had flattened it with its great size, but you can tell by the way it's been pulled and shifted that this was a foot. A very large, very mighty sized foot. And across the other side of the path, you would notice it almost looks like small shifts in the actual plant life itself. But you realize those are also footsteps. Small, tiny, almost running alongside each other on either side of the path. One having large imprints, about as large as your body. Other side having imprints much, much smaller. Those that almost seem like two sizes of life were besetting each end of this path.
Seems like we have run upon a bit of a battlefield of sorts. A bit ago. Something small and something big. A bit of movement. It seems like they must have been going at one another.
It is like I mentioned before, there are lots of Fey life here who do not very much get along. But I assure you, where we're going should be safe. It is actually a long since, it used to be a big building, or a tower as you'd call it, but they had too much war there and fighting, and it all fell apart. I think a dragon crashed there at one point.
You have dragons in the Feywild as well.
Oh yeah, we do. You don't see them too often, though. They don't really... I heard stories in your world dragons are usually be quite mean. Our dragons are not very mean. They're kind of nice, but they don't like to be... Oh yeah, there's some very nice ones. Well, Saren likes to fight them. He killed a few of them. He kind of ruins having dragons around, to be honest.
Well, Saren ruins a lot of nice things, doesn't he?
He really likes to. He thinks very highly of himself. I think he does it out of a love of himself and power.
I think he's trying to compensate for something.
What did he compensate for? Oh, he's not very tall, though, is he? He must be very short. He's not a very tall guy. Maybe that's why.
Very short indeed.
After some time would pass, you'd find yourselves actually breaking open through the path. Again, finding your feet sort of pitter-patter splashing against. It looks like what would have been a small pond that has since thinned on its edge, now seemingly just a long, flowing puddle. And again, before you, you'd see trees breaking forth into a small glade. You'd see structures, towers of brick, maybe only about 15 or 20 feet tall, broken into small segments that cast thin shadows across this already shadowy glade. It seemed as if you found just that. It looks like the remains of maybe a temple or a castle or something, but has either been long since consumed by the earth or just simply blasted by something else. It looks like this main structure had been forcibly like thrown apart by maybe a storm, but the rest of it seems to be torn and broken apart into chunks. And again, ground seems to be laden in what seems to be like indentations of all sorts of footsteps from all sorts of different types of creatures. As you would find yourselves a place of respite. There we are. This is usually the safest place if I have to find somewhere to sleep. There's plenty of little walls to huddle yourself against. You can maybe even dig a hole if you like that. I'm sorry, I'm not a very good host here. I usually use this to hide away from lots of people. I'm not used to, to having guests.
I think this will do nicely.
To be more than sufficient.
Well, alrighty then. So this is one of my favorite little places. Give you the tour. I like hiding around this corner here. It's very small, very compact. When I guess when one of these ones gets very low, it casts a big shadow. Very lovely. A little wet. I like the wet. I don't know if you guys like to sleep in water. It's really comfortable for me. Usually easy for how to find a little hiding place. But I know maybe not all people like to sleep in water. Some people sleep there way too long. I kind of noticed that in your world.
Lord, would you like to get out of the water?
You see Lord Kalon just sort of standing in the middle of this puddle, actually looking at the ground in the trail it leads, where you can see it looks like a mark of rock having like picked up from the edge and now sticking out of the earth, and he starts walking alongside of it. And it's until he gets about to the midsection you'd realize these rocks have spines growing upon them. And from the grander scope, you'd see this looks to be the bones of some great leviathan half buried in the dirt, with the ribs, at least you can tell where the ribs are, seem to be covered and surrounded by old, now moss-covered spears that picket and fence the ground around it. I'd never seen a dragon in my life. This is quite alien.
Oh, maybe it wasn't a dragon. Maybe it was a tassel worm.
They're magnificent creatures up close, but just as terrifying all the same. Depends on the dragon, I guess, though.
As he just
Oh,
sort of
yes,
looks back
there
at
are
you,
some
Persephone.
wall bones.
Are you,
I'll walk over and unearth like a spear of these and see what the metal on the head is.
Sure. You sort of pull it out. It's strange. It looks almost like unrefined ore. Like someone had just taken a big chunk of that raw metal from the earth, and possibly through either strange alien craftsmanship or perhaps more realistically magic, that ore has been extended and twisted and formed in the shape of a really rudimentary looking spearhead. It's a long, thin, sharpened point, not so much a arrowhead looking spearhead. And along it you can see small rivulets, either of worn nature or perhaps just sort of maybe a motif that the Fae had given this thing. But it seems to be just made of, like, hard to say what it is. It's not iron, but something else.
Is it still sharp?
Seems pretty sharp. Looks like you could probably stand to wash it off. It's got some dirt and hard stone. Some of it's still clinging to the tip. It's been sitting in the ground for a while. But you could probably wash it off and use it.
Being in the forges in Skyreach, do I recognize anything even remotely of what the Great Smith had? Does
In
this
terms of,
reminisce anything of like a metal?
I'm gonna say just give me a straight up, like, history check or int roll. Whichever you got. See how much you know. Pretty decently. This is something quite similar to something that's quite prominent in the world of Hearth, especially that in Illyria. This is effectively unrefined mithril, like the pure ore itself that has been twisted and pulled. It doesn't glimmer like starlight when it is refined and when it's turned and forged in the bars. It looks kind of like slate steel, with maybe like the slightest extra sheen to it in the light, especially now that there's sort of a dim light shadow cast everywhere. This looks like if it were broken down and melted, it could be made into proper mithril, but as it is, it's unrefined.
Is it as heavy as normal steel, or is it?
It's mithril, so it's pretty light. About half as we expect of a normal spear.
How many spears are in the ground here?
Looks like about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a dozen.
I'll just go about snapping the spears off and just grabbing the spearheads.
Okay, just snapping the tips off.
Yep.
Sure. Just getting about maybe like a quarter pound. These things are particularly long. Let's like a fifth of a pound each one. 1/6 of a pound to make it even.
Okay, so 1 pound.
You just see Kalaw just looking over the bones and then turn back to you, Persephone. You have become something of a dragon expert, haven't you? You've faced one yourself, it seems.
I spent months of research and preparation for one too.
Even seen one with your eyes. Remarkable. As he just sort of walks along, just looking at these bones sort of whimsically, as you see Calliope just sort of walking up farther north toward this larger temple. And this is where lots of free room you'll have to play. Not a lot of people to play with here, but lots of room if you guys need to stretch out or hide or light a fire or something. Maybe not a fire, it's a little dark. Lots of light might be attracted.
Well, Persephone has something for light.
Oh, does it work with fire too?
I believe so. I think that was the point for
Oh.
it.
Are we talking about my bubble?
Yes, we're talking about your bubble, Persephone.
Maybe don't yell very loud, it's still kind of dangerous, but that's okay. We're talking about the bubble.
Persephone hurries over. Yes, my bubble can hide fire.
Oh, well there you go. You can have a nice warm fire. Maybe make some good food. It'd be like a camp out.
Yeah, the only catch is that I can't leave my bubble. Everybody else can. So wherever I put it down is pretty much where I have to stay.
Oh, well that's not very fun. I'll just stay with you in the bubble. Don't worry about leaving.
Yeah. But for now, I'm just gonna take a look around. You know, before I'm bound to my bubble.
Yes, let's have some fun before you have to sit and keep us all safe. Thank you, Persephone.
Lord Kalon, would you like a souvenir?
I'm just simply going to watch and look. These things are much larger than I'd ever realized. I'd heard they're huge, grand in size, so much so they threaten entire cities, but this is only a part of one.
I'm sure the rest of it is buried beneath the earth.
It is truly terrifying to imagine.
Their bones are very robust. They
Seems
do make
so.
fine desk ornaments, perhaps a ceremonial pen for some important signing.
I do not quite feel like gathering memories of my time here. It
Fair
is
enough.
certainly not a pleasant one. But she faced this down, didn't she?
With the braveness of a warrior.
I'm just thankful she's still alive. Very remarkable. Remarkable. You just hear him sort of just muttering to himself, just again, spending some quiet moments, just looking over this entire thing. It's really all he's doing.
You raised a magnificent daughter, Lord. You should be proud of her.
I don't believe I can take all the credit. Okay. Seems like you guys have found a quiet place of respite. Seems like now, what seems to be, it doesn't even really feel like night's come, but the travel has worn down upon your shoulders. An internal clock of yours is telling you it's time to rest. But how you set up your camp? What's going on here? What's the watches like? What are you doing?
First, I was just gonna ask everybody where they want to hunker down. If they want to stay inside the temple, if anybody wants to go outside. Because, you know, it's a lot of space, but my bubble isn't going to fill all of the space. Remember that.
I feel like probably around where we are right now is fine.
I think the temple is a good place. It's elevated ground. Nothing can sneak up underneath us because it is stone. We have visibility in all directions. Very defensible.
All right. So Persephone looks at a spot and connects with her hearth of moonlight and shadow.
Before you do that, Black Lord, we must be near her. We can leave the bubble once it is constructed, but we need to be within it when it starts.
Wrong bubble.
All right. Let's see how this works. As he'll just enter closer and closer as he sees Persephone conjuring some magic, and he just tries to find himself relatively his own space distance from the rest of the party. Just sort of waits to see how this works out.
Now that we
Always
have our
enjoyed
little
this drink.
hearth, I could tell you, Calliope and Lord Kellon, of our tale, if you so wish. A wonderful
I would love
little
to hear.
tool granted to me through some diligent effort on, well, all of our part, really, but especially me, by the incantation of 10. A little record-keeping sphere of theirs. Something they like to use to document things as they happen. As I pull out my portable IMAX Pearl.
I've heard of the pearls they use for those meetings of theirs. They're quite short-lived. Must be a backstory.
It would be, had I not gone through great efforts and a lot of investment to make it a much more potent orb of witness than the normal ones. We are adventurers, and our reputation must precede us, so I must make sure to be able to tell a grand story. One based in truth and barely changed. Now, where to begin? Ah, yes, the diligent efforts of Persephone, for sure. As I'll take out the orb of witness, raise it up in my hands.
The centaurs?
No, not quite, dearie. And speak the command word, behold, going through in a few short moments, basically the whole sort of storytelling procedure that I had done multiple times in Oakwell, and give my best foot forward, trying to showcase what we went through and make it cool and bombastic in regards to the Valiant Vanguard's tale against Obsidious the Pretender.
Okay. In fantastic storyteller's fashion, you'd see the illusion come to life. The same sort of crag in the depths of the great volcano, bubbling with hot, teeming life, magma breaking through the earth. You'd see the great beast itself burst forth from the edge of this vision into reality, as you could see images of the Valiant Vanguard doing their best to strike this thing down. Samantha wrapping herself around it, and before claws and flame tear her from it. But quickly on its side, you'd see as it retreats backwards, it falls back and is claimed by the Spear of Quildor before, after a multitude of flames seeming to surround you guys, trying to take your lives while returning that which belonged to the dragon and restore to life. Strange necromantic magic seems to suck away all the power that would restore it, and waves of water just come washing across, putting out the flames, and eventually you'd see the dragon laid slain. Calliope the entire time is just listless and enjoying every moment. She'll even, unlike some of the other spectators, you'd actually see her sort of approaching the illusions themselves as the dragon approaches. She'll like jump back in fear, and then she'll get really excited and reach up and just try to touch it. But her hands just go straight through, and then she just sort of plays along and follows after it as if she's part of the show. And Kellon just watches on, visibly perturbed at the sight of this dragon and Persephone being so close to it, the way she fought before pulling away to a safe distance, watching her use her magic to help not only keep her friends safe from the flames of this thing and the deadly claws that would threaten to bear down on them, but also using strange and powerful magic to not only subdue her foes, those of fire, but to simply remove them from the world. a big wave of water crashing over these masses of living flame until they're no more, and whatever threat had, I guess was threatened to give rise to the dragon again had been literally quenched. And by the end of it, you do see him sitting up, watching the illusion fade away, and it takes him a moment before he sort of comes back to reality. And he just sort of like claps his hands once together, almost like he's about to applause, but then sort of just rubs them together afterwards. That was a daring performance. Well done. Very well done, all of you. I'd I'd held your skills in high regard since hearing your acquisition of your title, but to see it in action, it's truly amazing. All of you. That was so cool! I didn't even know they got that big. Why did they have all those black scales on them and red scales? Ours come in all sorts of different colors, but they're always glowing, and they have little wings that sometimes stretch out into different forms, and sometimes they breathe gas instead of fire. That one is made of fire. It's like a Lacerda dragon.
Oh gods, it was like a Lacerda dragon.
Indeed. It was good to really have, well, as I'm sure you recall from the first part of that performance, Persephone's brilliant idea to lure the dragon out when we first saw it really gave us a lot of need-to-know information about that thing, what it was made out of, that strange obsidian coursing throughout its body. It showed that there was a deeper connection between that dragon and, it seems, the elemental plane of fire. Though its plans were not able to be put into action, thanks to our efforts, it is quite peculiar nonetheless.
Indeed. Perhaps Calliope would be interested to learn how you lured the beast out, Persephone.
So, I'm part of a circle of druids known as Dreamwalkers. And I decided I was going to try to go into this dragon's dream. And I did. And I was able to create this dream almost like a vision, similar to like a prophecy that told him where to find this pearl of power. It wasn't actually a pearl of power. We put in like one of the big pearls from the city to let him find it, but we made it look really, really, really important. And I made the dream stop immediately before he could get it, so that when he woke up, all that he would want to do is go after this pearl.
That's a really funny prank. You pranked a dragon!
I did! I pranked a dragon, and he took it!
Just gonna look over at Kalon and see what his expression looks like.
He's just looking over at Persephone.
Kalon, yeah.
You'll see the Lord watching his daughter bounce up and down excitedly, and you'll see his eyes. Like, it almost looks like shocked, and then seeing her basically saying these things, what normally in the context of this world would be ridiculously impossible, and he's just watching her. And then he just sort of, you can't help but see just his mouth sort of like move a little bit, like a half smile. That is quite a ridiculous notion, but you managed to outsmart him. Very well done.
You know, perhaps instead of trancing tonight and going to real sleep, I can show you.
I don't understand.
Well, elves can sleep. They just don't most of the time. And if
There's
you put
no
yourself...
reason to.
Well, sure, but if you put yourself into the state of actually sleeping like all other creatures of Hearth, I could go into your dreams and show you how I changed the dragon's dream.
I would rescind the offer. I don't feel comfortable not trancing and being unconscious in this place, even under the protection of dragon slayers. Let alone considering certain circumstances and the party it seems you keep. Placing myself in a further vulnerable position seems less than ideal for me. Thank you.
What's wrong? You don't want to take another dip in the pool?
That is exactly why I will not trance. I mean, you could go to my dream if you want, Persephone. I like to sleep. It takes a lot of effort to actually sleep, but you can see. I'd like to see how this dreaming thing works. I've heard of dream circles. I've heard of even dream walkers, but I've never actually met one. Lots of dream walkers aren't even really in the Fae. I've heard they like to travel to it. They're people from other worlds.
What does a Fae even dream about?
Maybe we should find out.
Rainbow-colored sheep, I suppose.
Honestly, I don't even know. I get so excited thinking about it. My mind races. Okay, I'll go to sleep tonight. You try to dream on me, okay?
Okay, so I will probably stay up for first watch so I can try to see if Calipy dreams.
Make sure you get your rest properly, though.
All right. Is there anything you guys want to do? Moving on to watches. Persephone's on first watch. What about the rest of y'all?
I'll take second watch.
Also gonna sneak in that second watch.
There's only 7 colors. I am angry about this.
What about Father?
Only
Is he...
Roll20 knew that we needed more than 7 colors because that's how we roll.
Right.
I
Is
will
Father
remain.
immediately
I'll
cramping?
I will trance near the end when 5 begins to grow low. I'd prefer to stay awake for now. Keep my bearings before I allow myself to even slightly lower to my defenses. As he will take first and second watch.
Just
You
pull
don't
up my
have to
ring
worry,
and-
Lord. I don't need sleep. I'll watch over you. It's like giving him a sly, sort of cheeky grin.
I'm certain you would. No, thank you. So he'll sort of settle himself next to one of the fallen broken pillars and just sort of seat himself down. All right, so Tala, what are you doing? You sleeping?
So Thala, staying awake. She is trancing third and fourth watch because she is a nocturnal girl.
All right, a lot of people up at
No
first
staying
beginning.
up. So Thala
Alright.
always stays up.
Ha.
You guys are the outliers.
Alrighty. As first watch would come, you'd be in the middle of your bubble, the firelight kept well enough suppressed and contained before. Seems like the hearth. It seems like if you were to any one of you were to step out, it just seems like the smallest, tiniest ember, like a single firefly, was sitting in the center of this glade, keeping all of you well darkened and shadowed.
Now, how did the casting magic and resting thing work out?
As in, like, casting spells while you're in the middle of a rest?
Yeah.
Typically it does force you out of your rest.
But
You're
you have
like,
to,
I'm gonna cast a big spell. Like, well,
you have to like,
yeah, but
you
you're
have to like do stuff for like over a certain amount of time, though, right?
yeah. Like
Okay.
it's typically like for like an hour. Like if you're casting a big spell for like over an hour, you lose your ability to do a rest because you're fucking
I
focusing
gotcha.
on magic for an hour.
Yeah, so I'm just
Okay.
going to take a look at one of the things I wanted to do when I came up here was take a look at this seemingly throne-like structure
Mhm.
up here and see if there were like any sort of engravings or markings or anything like that on it before I sat down on it.
Sure. It seems like most of it has been worn the hell away. Give me an investigation roll though.
Yeah,
Found this on some little grooves.
I use all of my eyes. I almost hit intimidation. There we go. Investigation. I don't have +5 to that.
Okay, 14. You do see there are some slight grooves. Again, it looks like carvings that had been worn away, but with that score, not quite enough to actually discern what they say.
All right, I check it off the box of. All right, well, whatever. It's all gone, and enjoy my rest from there. Spending time looking at my Elminster notes, specifically focusing on. Where is it? Studying necromancy, and the like formulas and sequences related to necromantic magic, and trying to maintain control of longer duration spells to do with that
Gotcha.
school
Okay.
for the first probably 2 watches, unless anyone engages me with anything.
Sure. Alrighty. Yes, Persephone, what are you up to?
Well, since Caleb says it might take her a bit to sleep, she's going to sit down next to her father, who, I don't know, he probably doesn't have a book. What is he doing?
He's just sort of keeping himself aware of his surroundings. He's watching to see where these allies of his are currently stationed, especially a pair of them, making sure there's a good distance and a clear shot between at least himself and Luna, as well as possibly Samantha. Keeping his eyes also peered outside of the bubble towards the surrounding wildlife. Seems like he's still very much on edge, not really taking his attention away from anything else.
Cautious as always.
We are in an alien world, surrounded by things that apparently might pop out and kill us. Things we may not even be able to see. Things that can strike fear into you and prevent you from even lifting a finger. I would prefer to remain cautious above everything else.
Well, of course. You are aware that the same thing can happen out in the Illyrian forest too, though, right?
I haven't ventured far beyond the city walls.
Yeah, you mentioned that every elf, well, I guess every civilian elf adventures, but you weren't even next in line to take Inolin. You never did anything not nobly?
Even before everything transpired and what we have now fell into our laps, I was the one who truly wanted to stay within and follow my duty. My sister she was the adventurer. She defied whatever walls tried to contain her. She was the one who ventured forth and would be reprimanded for it. I learned from her that way.
It's almost a little bit like Rael and me. One of us would be the ones reprimanded and cover for the other so they could run out into the forest without anybody knowing.
Yes. Eerily similar at times.
So, how... If you're just like a regular stuffy, boring noble, how did you and Mother... I mean, Mother is fun. Mother loves telling stories and hearing about adventures. How? I just don't... It doesn't make sense in my head.
She loves stories. I enjoyed reading stories. It is my only gift I had to offer at the time. I suppose we haven't discussed how we've met at times. Your mother was more likely to have the opportunity to say such. As he'll just sort of look around into the vast wilderness, you can see one of the large tree branches like sort of swaying in the wind, and then reach out and like almost like the branches curled to a mouth, just snaps at something in the air and goes back normal. I suppose this is as adequate a setting as I could hope for. I was not a very well-traveled elf. I was bound to duty by my own father. He assured me that if my sister were not to follow in his path, if she were to stray, I would need to be prepared in case the worst happened, in case she ran away. She'd often talk about it. And so I had not much opportunity to leave the city. I spend most of my days... If I wished to learn more, I would read of it, or I'd seek a tutor. Lord Galleon was my teacher. He ushered me into everything I am today. He also shared with me the stories of the places he'd traveled. Stories of lands I accepted I would never see. And I suppose it's the only thing I had that I could use to catch your mother's eye. She was very much a traveling spirit. She enjoyed stories. She enjoyed tales. She enjoyed hearing of them firsthand, and I had none to give her, save for those of my compatriots and my tutor. And so would meet her in public, and I would share a story, and I may have, at the time, insisted it was my own. And she caught on quite quickly. Shortly. Perhaps the first story. It wasn't many attempts. But saw something in that she found redeemable, and she stayed. And she wanted to hear more, even if they weren't my own. And I've even told her at times, when I was much younger, I dreamed of leaving and seeing the world, but, well, perhaps it's something I was never meant to. But with the prospect of finding myself suited to her, we might have an opportunity. Perhaps the situation changed, and had things not gone as they did, I might have absconded from the city. I might have found myself somewhere else. We may have found ourselves somewhere else. And that changed.
That's a great story.
I'm told I'm quite good at telling them.
Were you and Mother thinking of traveling after the wedding?
I would truly hope to stay long enough to ensure Rayo would take over his duties properly. And perhaps if I found that adequate enough, yes, we might see the coast. She'd talked of it often.
Yeah. There was a cartographer in town once when we were really young, and he would tell us these stories he heard from the fishermen off on the coast. And then Mother was just so in love with the stories, and even Rael loved them, and he made these beautiful maps, so we commissioned him to make one for us.
I see. He does enjoy maps. He scribbles upon them as notes in the corners. It's not really truly scribbling, actually. It's quite well made, actually. You might even mistake it for a map itself.
We were the same as Mother, I guess, when we were younger. And we'd always think about traveling outside of Inalin. We would collect the feathers that fell into the garden, and we would use them as pins to mark places on the maps that we wanted to go. And we kept track of all of the stories the cartographer told us, and we thought we were going to go to all of these different places and look into their stories and investigate them, and either see that they're real or they're not. And well, I started collecting feathers, I guess. And I had my friend Tamarkhan drop some maps of the places that we've been. I gave him the parcel. I don't know if he's opened it yet.
Perhaps not. May recall such a thing. It's possibly still on his desk at my regard. I just seem to sort of like look away from you and just off into the distance again. I'll be sure he gets to see it in time.
Yeah. Who else knows about the key going missing?
I had done my best to keep the situation under control. No servants were told, of course. In fact, most of them I had ensured would not enter the premises. At the time, I had a hard time believing the reality of the situation, and so I assumed it was them. I suppose only by now your mother, likely, she's caught on to what happened. She's quite keen. And Lord Galleon.
Do you think Lord Galleon would tell the rest of the council?
Likely not. He actually insisted we retrieve it silently and subtly. Wants to didn't want to stir trouble, or at least let it out that such a precious item was out in the open, not guarded. It would incite thieves to take it. Who would think?
Well, it wasn't like I was trying to keep it a secret. I left you a note.
So it seems you did. So it seems you did.
Did you even get a chance to read it?
I did.
Like, did you actually read it? Or did you just look at the words and get angry?
I read it and I had a reaction. And then I pursued. But yes, I did read. I did read. And I understand.
I'm gonna insight check that. I don't know if I believe that he understands.
Give me an insight check. It does seem like a little fishy. You're passive. You see a look of resignation on his face as he says that, more so like he's biting down on these words to speak them. And really, what you see deeper is sort of a sad look in his eye. I have been understandably unfair to both of you. Truly more so to Rail. And I understand that this is beyond what a parent should, I suppose, ever put or ask of a child. And I do feel remorse. I do. It is not easy to admit and announce, but I do feel remorse for the things I must ask of you and him, especially him. But it is something I feel I cannot change. Had things been different much long ago, it would have been much different, Laura. I wouldn't have to ask your brother to marry. I wouldn't have chased you away. We could have been somewhere else, somewhere happy.
I spent a long time wishing things were different so that I can live the life I said I wanted. But that's kind of the most wonderful thing about life. You can change whenever you want. People just make you believe that you can't.
So it seems.
So it seems. Oh, I'm gonna see if Caliph is asleep because I'm sure she's ready for some dream adventures.
Persephone's just going to excitedly hop up and make her way over to her beloved friend.
He just seems to watch you as you go. I guess Swift Hollow would see it if she's awake and watching. Just watches Persephone as she goes, just looking after her longingly, and just keeps his eyes on her the entire time. He's no longer searching around the entire forest like a paranoid watchdog. He's instead just watching Persephone as she gets to work.
And Samantha, it's not like everything is blocked out when I use this magic, so if second watch comes through and I'm still in dream world, just wake me up.
What? Why?
Well, you don't want me to be up all night. I'm in the dream world, but I'm still using magic. So if I'm in the dream world the entire night, I'm not actually sleeping or resting.
Ah, so I should come put you to bed so you're not goofing off all night. Understood.
Will you tell me a story and tuck me in?
You want some warm milk too?
I don't answer that. I just start scribbling my little sigils with my crystal for the dream spell.
All right. Yeah, Swift Hollow, you doing anything? You just sitting watching? What are you up to while she's using this magic?
Testing my own.
Oh, nice.
As with all will be kind of busy doing her usual her usual things doing while she's awake, checking her gear, oiling the knives, checking the crossbow bolt. But also, I guess she wouldn't really wander out, but sticking to the side in a way. So I'm messing with her some of her magic. Trying to call upon it, like she did in that burst of I wouldn't say emotion. That would be strong, but just feeling something inside of her.
Okay.
As a ritual, she's gonna cast a little alarm.
Hey. Sweet. What does it look like when you're casting it then? If you're testing it out.
She's just like messing around because there's like wildlife around, isn't there?
Every so often, if you venture out, you might see like a strange-looking rodent or something, a nocturnal bird with two sets of wings.
Of course. Yeah, she's like reaching out to these things, these creatures, and then slowly but surely she calls upon perhaps smaller things, not much rodents, but maybe insects and the like, trying to bend them to not her will, but coerce them into perhaps little balls of light, trying to create, how would you say, like bells out of the flowers and glowing lights.
Nice.
Although all around her, because it's only a small area. I guess small, relatively speaking, because it's
20-foot cube.
Oh,
Where are you
geez.
putting that 20-foot cube? You gotta put it somewhere.
I guess centered on myself, because I'm the important one.
Okay.
Oof.
Yeah. Big old 20-foot cube of strange, soft glowing lights and plants shifting into what seems to be actual bells. Maybe with
Well,
a soft.
actually, I guess I could put it over Calliope and Persephone, because they're the ones sleeping. Sleeping.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Put a big old square on them.
Yeah, Swift Hollow's like gesticulating over to Persephone and Calliope as the lights form around them.
Beautiful. Okay.
Pelvic thrusting in their general direction.
Jesus.
This is my flavor.
To prepare for the orgy.
Nope.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right.
As it looks like bells made out of flowers filled with glowing lights. I'll make ring-a-ding noises.
Ring a ding.
Just
Ring-a-ding.
soft little chiming as breeze blows through and shifts the grass that now turns into what seems to be a soft chorus of bells. As Persephone.
Find yourself taking up magic, Swift Hollow. As I'm watching these bells sort of spring into existence about 5 feet from me around Persephone and Calliope.
No.
Fuck off, mate.
Taking.
Jog on, mate.
All high elves are proficient with magic.
This seems a bit further than simple tavern tricks, though.
It seems this land is so suffused with magic, even a high elf who is only so inclined with mere cantrips can bend it. I suppose that's only some of us. As her eyes glance over to the Lord.
It is quite peculiar why his magic has been shut off, but yours seems to be taking a turn upwards. Interesting. Hopefully a permanent change then when we leave this place. A new tool to add to your belt.
I doubt it. While I have been dabbling using magic, how do you think I made that knockpick? Oh, oops. And she turns back to Samantha.
You made that.
I had help. But I required devices and material things to imbue them. That's the magic that I've been tinkering with. A high efficiency with very little.
Are you saying there's another conspirator behind your theft?
Eh,
I would love to know
maybe.
who they are.
Ah, Lord
Surely.
Kellon, don't worry yourself with such trivial matters.
Trivial matter. Right.
I
Right.
guarantee by the end of all of this, you'll be thankful for what it is we've done. You certainly wouldn't want your beautiful city and the cities surrounding it ending up, well, she sort of just gestures towards the gnarl wood around us. I used to say a marriage is destined to last forever.
Anyways, I have not wielded magic in such a freeform way like this, no.
Well, if there's any way that I could be of assistance, I've been learning quite a bit about magic myself. I know you have your assistant, but they won't always be with us. I could loan you some of the tomes I've been studying if you'd like. You might find them useful.
That magic is for me. You, Luna, and Persephone, and I suppose, oh, I would guess the Lord. I'll call upon some grandiose magic, while mine is, oh, smaller. The power comes not from, I suppose, the raw power itself that you all call upon, but in the efficiency of putting it in a device to use.
I do recall a small blurb talking about something to that notion. Ah, perhaps I can find something then.
I suppose in play speak, yes, I have been dabbling in artifice.
That's right, that's what it's called. Ah. Well, it'll be interesting to see where that takes you then.
Steel is fine, but magical trinkets certainly there. Use.
As I yield the floor.
After some time passes, the world around you becoming a singing song of bells and plant life. Persephone, you find your magic taking hold. Calliope seems mostly sound asleep. She just kind of maybe toss and turn every once in a while. Seems like her anxiety and excitement still sort of carries on even when she's seemingly unconscious. As your dream would reach out and take hold of her mind. And you'd find yourself shifting into what looks to be a strange and sort of not quite a formed dream. It seems to be constantly shifting in nature. In one moment, you'd find yourself like rushing through this impossibly large river, the force of it carrying you forward until suddenly you're sort of forced onto your feet as if rushed out of the current onto some soft, warm grass in the great field of some far off place where the hills roll infinitely onward. Nothing in the horizon but the rising and falling of these grasslands, and then they seem to grow taller and wider until they become a great gold color and the sun beats down and you feel this warm breeze rush over you. It's like the seasons themselves are constantly changing and the world around you is constantly shifting. And you have a hard time even now like trying to find where Calliope is in all of this. It's just the world itself and maybe the life within it, but where the little Fae sprite is you don't really find her. At least not where you first enter. But you do have full control of a dream, so what do you do?
Okay, well, all the rules are different now because we're in the Feywilds. So I guess first thing I'm going to do is find my way around this dream. I just want to feel how it's changing and move with it. And call out into the void for Caliphie and see if something answers back.
Sure. You just sort of let it carry you to and fro. It doesn't seem harmful. It just seems more exciting. Everything is in a constant state of flux, carrying you from one scene, one season, one moment, one day to the next. And as you call out for Calliope, you can hear this sort of resounding, echoing voice calling back from all around, like even carried on the wind itself. Who's there? Who's playing with me? Is this a game? I love games. Calliope. I'll be Calliope today. As out of like from the grasslands that approach your feet, you'll see this large mound of plant life rise up and knit itself neatly into the image of the little sprite you know, Calliope. Sort of stepping into fray and just sort of dancing and twirling, and you'll see the grass rise up again. Another Calliope pops out. Calliope, 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 Calliope. I love this name so very much. And she just seems to be constantly forming more of herself,
Oh, wow.
clueless and unaware of your presence, but not untouched by the influence, it seems.
Huh. Okay, Calliope. Who else can you be?
Who else can I be? I can be anyone I want. I could be. I have no friends. What are their names? I can be Persephone, as you'll see her form just shift and shiver, and she's just a mirror image of at least what you think you look like. I could be a really funny friend, Luna, as the long hair falls down from her shoulders in this long, dark, like waterfall of silk as she becomes Luna just before you. Although she can't help but break the character and smile. I could be strong and mighty, like where her body seems to expand and like the layers of plant life around her shell seem to unfurl and harden into armor as she transforms into the broad-shouldered elf. I could be Quildor. As he'll just sort of like stand there and then hears this laughter, and you can see a big, uncharacteristic grin spread across his face. I like this game. I get to play with all the people I've met, and all the people I'd love to be. Who else can I be? I can be Lysanne, the jerk bully, as his body explodes into fire and just becomes this weird, grotesque, I don't know what you'd call it, a caricature of Lysanne, mostly made of fire, long, twisted grins, horns curled on his head like a devil. Who else? Who else? What else can I become for my new friend? Perhaps I already was Calliope.
Have you ever been Queen Titania?
I could
Have you
be
ever
Queen
wanted to be?
Titania. I could be Queen Titania. Large and powerful and far, far more beautiful than any other creature that has ever laid eyes upon her. As her form grows in size, Persephone, you see immediately the ground beneath your feet actually rise up and around her, almost cocoon her to encapsulate not only the size of a person, but much, much larger. You'd think maybe 3 to 4 times the size of yourself, as the grass seems to change in color from a bright green to a long flowing white, like a gentle dress, completely engulfing this form. And from as it sort of unfurls and gives life to this new appearance, you would see this soft and feel the soft glow and warmth of a strange presence, like you're standing next to the sun itself. Her skin is like sun-kissed gold, gently glimmering, even now in this strange dream world. Her hair, long, flowing white, almost you'd think like snow, but there's warmth to it like sunlight. Adorned across her body seems to be a whole assortment of jewels, mostly of gold and brass color, those that reflect the warmth of summer. And as she comes to form in this great gargantuan size, you would see, if I can do this right, there we are. Haha. You would see, at least before you in this strange magical world, standing well over 20 feet in height, body resplendent in every sense of the word. You would see a queen standing before you. Wonderful and beautiful and loved by everyone and everything. As she just looks down to you, Persephone, and kneels down, a massive hand coming up to sort of now taking recognition of you, like cupping your somewhat ephemeral chin and smiling. Hello there, darling.
Hi.
Are you a guest in this wonderful world of mine?
I am.
I'm so happy and excited to meet you. I assume you're coming to visit. You must be lost. You poor thing, lost in those woods. Lost and tormented by the sadness. No worries, no worries. You will find yourself in better places. The great warmth of the Sealy Kingdom awaits you. I hope to see you there. As her form just seems to fall apart and return back to what seems to be just a mound of grass, which starts up as this tiny little chubby looking seed. You'd see it almost looks like this, like about the size of like a house cat, maybe 2 feet tall. This massive plant life with stubby little arms, stubby little legs, just sort of standing there, craning what seems to be a head, a facsimile of a face, until it looks up at you, and then immediately sort of shivers and shakes, and the form twists and returns to this beautiful green nymph that you've known as Calliope. Persephone, did you see me naked?
What? No, you were just. Were you just?
I don't know. I was sleeping. Is this a dream? Is this where we are? Oh, this is very exciting. Oh, can we play a game? Look, these hills are so big. We could play tag. We could run endlessly and never ever stop. But you didn't see me naked, did you?
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
No, thank gods for that.
Okay.
A lot of people like to be naked in their dreams. I've learned.
That's really strange. I've never been naked in my dreams, except for the worst ones. It's very embarrassing. People like to see me. I want to talk about it. Let's go play tag.
We're gonna go play tag in the hills. And let's make it a little more fun. Let's run away from Lacerin.
That sounds very fun and also very scary. Let's do it! As immediately the grasslands behind you burst into flame as you hear this cackling laughter. Calliope! Oh, come out and play! As the flames start racing towards you. We better run!
Yeah, we better run!
As the two of them go bounding and sprinting across these great summer plains, what apparently seems to be now taken by a wildfire led to a single point, as if it's living and guiding itself in their direction. As the dream would carry on, as joyously, or maybe as terrifyingly as it ends up becoming. As first watch would come to an end. Seemingly unaffected. Night is still quiet, as second watch would begin.
Will this wake you up at the end or the start of second watch?
Start. So Purse can sleep.
Could you
Because
be,
I
what,
need to
6
sleep. I'm
hours
not
of
a
sleep?
Full elf. I need ya. I'm a half elf. You know this. We've been
Actually,
traveling for a year.
For you?
Sort of raise up my my arm. Would you be so kind as to wake up our little botanical friend? And just send Rail. No, not Rail. Raziel?
Raziel. As you feel this sort of
Raziel.
slipping from your hand as this invisible thing comes swimming through the air. And yeah, Persephone, as you're sort of lost in this trance in this moment, you'd feel the sudden, like, weird slipping.
Now, I switch his form as he lands in front of her into a cat.
His form gets transformed, less magical in nature, appearing visible as it lands right in front of this little girl. And so it's pawing at her, rubbing its tail against like underside of her chin, reaching up until she doesn't respond, sort of patting at her face. Just trying eventually to this
in the
cat appears
dream
for you.
world. Persephone stops everything in the dream world.
Oh! I think I have to go right now, Calliope.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll keep playing until we wake up. How does this work? This is weird. I like it. It's weird.
Well, after I'm gone, I guess you could just do whatever you want, or I could turn this into more fun for you to play around in. I don't actually know what happens when I leave.
Let's switch. Make me chase Lucerne. Make him a big baby.
You know what?
As Persephone brings her hands like down and up, Caleb, he can feel herself grow and grow and grow until she is towering over Lucerne.
Now go
You see the
catch
wildfire?
Lucerne.
You see the wildfire immediately come to a stop as she looks down. Lucerne, come out to play. As strangely enough, the wildfire pulls back, leaving this scorched land, and it's not as this giant comes stepping in these great heaving, thunderous footsteps in its direction. As the dream fades away.
In a bed of flowers that grew around her.
And just looks at this cat. Hi, kitty.
Sort of rubs up against you.
Oh, it's friendly.
Persephone sits up.
Oh,
As Persephone like quickly gets up and scurries around to Samantha. It's like,
Samantha, I think Queen Titania, I think we've met.
Oh, what?
In the dream. Calliope was turning into all the people that she knew, and then I thought it would be very clever to just kind of get an idea. So I was like, oh, turn into Queen Titania so that I could see her, and that way I could know if she was like an adult or if she was like a kid because she's new, whatever that's supposed to mean. And Samantha, she's well, bear in mind this, a lot of it probably be Caleb's perception unless it actually was her, but she was really, really, really tall, and she asked if I was lost, and she said that the Sealy Court will welcome us. And then Caleb popped in, and it was like she didn't really know what was happening. So I might have just met an archfey, and it felt like, remember when we were in front of Obsidius, just recognizing that we were in front of such a powerful creature? It felt that way to me, being in front of her.
Like she was imposing her will upon you.
I wouldn't say that, just the acknowledgement of something stronger.
Presence. That is to be expected, I suppose.
She didn't talk really like a young naive child like I would think. So I think we should start really thinking about how we're going to approach her.
Like a queen. I don't know what our answers are going to be in regards to your actual problem, but in terms of diplomacy, we should be able to navigate those waters. And try not to get into anything else when you actually sleep this time, please.
Well,
I sort of just snap my fingers, and Raziel turns back into a winged serpent and flies back to me.
I'll try not to. But, it's the way of the dreamwalker. Sometimes things happen in my dream. Okay, I'm gonna go to bed.
Do that. Thank you for letting me know, Persephone.
Yeah, sure.
Persephone's going to find herself
Next to Swift Hollow. Quiet night so far, I hope. Oh no, we lost Peter. Okay, well, Persephone's just going to... Very quiet night.
Persephone's going to sleep right here.
I open up my book of shadows, find the section that says Archfey Lolly, and scratch it out. Tamakon, Luna, you two awake?
Yeah. Who else is awake? Swift Hollow-ish. And, I look at Kalani and then turn back to Samantha.
What the?
Indeed it is! I trust you two to keep an eye on things. I need to Necromantic bindings are. Oh, okay. As she just sort of cones back to her big tome of magic auras. If you need me, feel free to ask for me or whatever. I'm here.
Understood. Although I think at this point almost everyone is awake. No one seems to enjoy a good night's sleep in his group. Just you and me, Luna. And with that, I'm thinking. Luna, can I have a moment of your time? Away from so many prying ears. Don't worry, I won't steal her heart in the middle of the night. Well, at least not on purpose.
I mean, you could try.
I mean, I am sure your brother would thank me for making his competition so much easier by sending you back to the cycle ahead of time.
As I sort of jaunt off towards the sort of the edge here. We're gonna start jaunting down the steps.
Those are
So where are we
anti-jump
going?
steps.
Where are we going? What is this?
Not too far. Just enjoying the night every bit. But I've been thinking for a bit now. Before we came to this place, returning to the wild, I talked to Persephone for just a bit. And it got me thinking about all of these. I have to admit, Luna, you know how we first met, myself and yesterday Vanguard. Did not exactly start out on the right foot. I still have to apologize for, well, literally getting off on the wrong foot with you. Hope it did not bruise too badly.
It was fine. I mean, I guess I should also apologize for blasting you in the face, but I also still take no responsibility for my actions.
But, I admit, ever since then, the idea of what I mentioned before, finding the group to bring back to the Feywild, to be a kindred spirit with myself. Those that's what find my cause to be their own. I never really saw the group as such. I wish for it, yes, but I was always keeping myself a bit on the outside. I'm a man to wander, and I was always one step away from doing so. Almost looking for an excuse. One more thing to prove, I suppose, that the group was not right. But after coming so far, to doing so much, to talking to Persephone and how she is not looking for someone to fix her problems, but for people to share in her problems. I feel like I should more give an honest chance to it all. And that means understanding who we are. And that's sort of why I'm coming to you first, Luna. I know a bit of the others' troubles, their worries, what they are trying to gain. Some wear it on their sleeve more than others. But, Luna, I have to admit, I do not know much of you. I know it seems like you and Samantha have taken a fascination in each other. I know that within the desert you seem to have a fascination with death. But I do not know what happened before you came down from the north. I heard tales of something dark occurring. Something that made the old companion Gregory second guess what you were up to. But what is it that you are looking for? I, I guess I'm simply asking Luna, will you share yourself with me? So we can become more than something so easily broken.
Honestly, sometimes I've forgotten that you haven't been here the entire time. So I never really went into it. I guess I also should probably tell Swift Hollow at some point in time, but I don't know if she's interested. Well, so for Persephone, she gets her magic from places like this, filled with colors and wonder and joy sometimes. But I don't have that luxury. My powers comes from the opposite, Shadowfell. And because of that, I've always been hunted by undead creatures. And at some point in time in my childhood, parents had to drop me off at a town called Garnswell, where they said that they would return, but they never did. And I came under the care of a doctor there named Eric Gelner. Unbeknownst to me, he was affecting my memory and erasing what I did know of my parents, and grew up basically just his until I found out that he was, a murderer and attempted to kill him and run away. And then that's when I found the rest of the group. So I've just been trying to get closer and closer to finding my real parents. I don't know where they were. I don't know where they are. I don't know if they're alive. And then you heard about the centaurs a little bit. Uh, when we found the stone, I guess, that the centaurs had to find blood relatives, I used that, and it told me to go back to Garen's Well. And when we did, found out that Eric was still alive. Even though I said I'm on fire, he was still alive. Uh, Turns out he was a vampire the entire time. It was really creepy. He wanted to use my powers to just go out in the sunlight like I can. So I don't really know if he truly cared about me or just wanted my powers.
I'm supposing you and the rest of the Vanguard put an end to such a creature.
And I think that was probably the last thing that really broke Gregory. It was not a pleasant time. There was a lot of innocent people. He almost killed someone who was turning into a vampire, but Javen was able to stop him. That would have probably broke him completely. But he seems to be doing better now.
What the views are on? A terrible thing, one to not only find that the one that raised you betrayed you, but to put an end to it, what too? You said you don't have the luxury with your strength that it comes from. Not like Persephone and me, but somewhere dark. Yet you still use it. What are you aiming for? If you carry such a burden to call upon something so dark, a price to be paid, yes. But why are you paying it?
I mean, we've helped people with it so far. I guess part of being attracted to the dead allows me to help them move on. There was a ghost that we found that I was able to help. Granted, he kind of like looked through me. I don't know what that was all about. He didn't really explain it. Uh, but I still helped him. I guess after all this, if I do find my parents, I might just wander, helping spirits move on.
Truly. It is a rare sight to see someone that does not have personal gain in mind. Even myself. Although I want to say that I am here to help, it is all in service of what I must do. You truly don't want anything for yourself.
I mean, what is there really to want? I mean, I want my family back, but that's it, really?
Wonderful. See, Luna, this is what I wanted. These are the things of stories, of people that are truly valiant. Maybe you are such a thing in this world. The real meaning behind the name of this group. Fascinating. And born from such a place of darkness.
Well, I wouldn't call myself valiant. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this several times. I don't really care about that name, that reputation. That's more Samantha's thing, and I'm sure Persephone wants to stay that. So I mostly just do it for them, but I don't particularly care.
Is there nothing more valiant than that? Being valiant is not exactly searching for fame and fortune. It is something born of greed. Luna, I think you and I will get along famously. I have to ask though. Like I mentioned before, I am going to make an effort. You are, I suppose, the second step as I fumbled into Persephone. But the one that has me most concerned. Swift Hollow is mysterious, but seems simple enough. And Quildor, he wears his emotions upon his sleeve even if he does not want to admit it. But Samantha is difficult. The head of it all, the one that branded it with Valiant, yes? The one that makes the decisions, points us in the direction. Wants the fame and fortune. And yet, she captured your heart. So there must be something else. Something that I am not seeing?
Samantha is great, but also complicated. I heard something back in Garen's Well that I kind of just put to the back of my mind because I didn't get a lot of context. Uh, I just haven't really asked her about it yet, but I mean, it seems like she's trying to get something back. From what she told us, she was part of a kingdom. I think she was a princess or a queen. I don't completely remember. And that her kingdom was overtaken by a cult, and they have her sister. And I think that put a very vengeful spark in her heart. And I think she just wants what's hers back. She is very protective of what she claims is hers. We had to go find a fucking horse for her. It was long and arduous, but I mean, she's very protective. I think sometimes we feel like she views us as objects to own, but I don't think she really means it that way. It just kind of comes out that way.
Understood. Possibly more damage than the rest of us. But say no more. Something that must be confronted directly. We will get there. Thank you, Luna. I sort of hop down in front of you. Thank you for sharing yourself with me. I know it is a difficult thing. I know I am one that is not so easily opened up to, being a stranger to all of this. But I think this will be a wonderful beginning to everything. An earnest step. And I think in these connections, these bonds, they're on power. Powers that may lead us to what we want. Even if that just means to be truly valiant. As I put a hand on your shoulder, and you can feel just a little bit of warmth, a little bit of strength, little bit of clearness of mind. Like something's just a little bit more right. That's how we get back to the crew. Or else Samantha really will start to get a little bit more possessive.
Yeah, be careful about taking what's hers. She might actually kill you.
Understood.
In fact, what's everyone doing? What's Kellon doing?
Killon just seems to be watching back off into the distance again. It seems like when you left, he was watching Persephone sort of settle back in, and I guess now he just sort of seems to be minding his own business, just sitting this time a little further south in the bubble, sort of looking down the pathway towards the now remnants of the stream down to the south. Just sort of lost in thought, it seems like.
As a small armored creature just kind of pops into existence in front of him.
Just out of nowhere.
So it kind of just floats from the ground up.
You'd see him immediately, like, he sits there staring off in the distance and his head goes down for a moment, and then he immediately, like, hand goes back behind him as he starts, like, backwards crawling away from this thing that's just rising silently out of the ground. What on earth? As he sees you guys entering into the bubble. There's a thing here! Kill it?
Oh, apologies. My hound was just intrigued. He's just doing rounds.
That is yours.
It is. We're familiar. Would you like to meet him? It's really nice.
I've never met a familiar like that. It seems otherworldly. I would prefer not to meet it.
It's so much fun. I didn't even get to do it before. It was mostly just explaining to him where I started. The whole Eric Gelner thing. Yeah, sometimes I forget. The accent, but like the voice still kind of sounds like Gregory.
Oh, hail.
Does it get me thinking? I do need to tell Sotalo, and Quodor was there, but I don't think I ever actually explained everything to Quodor. Yeah. Right. Okay. So that's a good thing or a bad thing? Yes, but Persephone's asleep, right? There's a theory I kind of want to check just real quick while she's not looking. Hey, come on.
Oh dear. What is it you need?
Just a
Hugo?
question. Calm down. What do you think of the summer matron?
She sounds very powerful. She has the gifts we suppose. Suppose you would ring it out of me if I don't say it myself. She has power that could give great efforts toward our nation, granting greater magic, reform. She's supposedly very kind and is taken to Kale simply through conversation.
Have you ever spoken to her?
I have briefly had. No, I have not.
Isn't it weird for a father not to speak to his soon to be daughter in law?
It is a marriage to a creature from another world who wields enough power to be a god. It is very much weird in very many ways, but I've been assured that all things have been accounted for. I have faith in my tutor.
Galleon.
Indeed.
Look at Samantha with the look that says, "Do I tell him?" Alright, come on. So you're probably not going to believe me because I already know you don't like me, and I don't fucking like you either. So when we were stealing your key, there's two galleons, or something of that sort. One that was speaking to you, and one that was inside your office.
Truly. A second galleon.
Yes.
The gods. A second galleon tampering with the notes. In my office. Gods. Did you find the third galleon? What of the fourth? Or the fifth? Or the sixth? Or the seventh?
You know, there's a really nice pool over there that I'm pretty sure Persephone would understand if you just suddenly started drowning.
You stole something precious, not only to me, to my city, and now you're speaking nonsense. You've spent this entire time toying with me. I don't believe your words. I have nothing to hear from you.
Look, all I'm trying to inform you
No, you
is
must
that
die.
Galleon is certainly not who you think he is. Maybe it's not even the same Galleon that you've known your entire life. You never know. But someone is trying to backstab you. Still trying to backstab you. You already backstabbed you, but someone else is trying to backstab you.
It seemed like it was constantly changing like power sources, something that would basically prolong the creation of a portal. You just see this disappointed look as he's holding his own notes in his hands. You're all very strange folk. You speak as if you're trying to aid me, and yet in the same time incriminate yourselves. Time and time again. I have nothing but the highest faith in my tutor. He has been with me through my entire life. If there is conspiracy, perhaps that is worth looking into, but it wouldn't be from him. As he'll just take his notes and just find a nice dry put them outside of the snake and try to just start sifting through them. Not really like he's reading them or trying to really follow what seems to be your direction, more just checking to see the content and quality of the pages. Of course. But that's all he really seems to be doing. He just sort of goes silent on you guys and just going through the notes.
Flora starts to walk away. She says, stop and kind of turn and say, I may not like you, but you're important to Persephone, and Persephone is important to me. So if something were to happen to you, she would be sad, and then that would make me irritated. That's all this is. So back to Samantha.
Hmm. I'll inquire Persephone on this later. As he'll just sort of skizing.
And if you don't, I will never give you your magic back.
Dragon Slayers. As he'll just go through the notes, taking his time, sifting through the last part of the watch, going through his belongings. As second watch comes to an end, third watch would begin. Eventually, Kalon just sort of settling, end up falling asleep reading his notes until he's just sort of slumped over on this fallen pillar.
Let's quit our eyes, these people, and you're not sleeping, I swear. Well, I'm going back to bed. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Tamakon.
Rub my back up against this little brick wall, snuggling a good bit.
We're the good guys, but we're not that good.
Okay. Seems like in this moment, there's like a slight feeling that your magic might pull away from you, but no, you actually seems to be quite in control of it. Okay. are you up to, Coolor?
Just sharpening my sword and watching over the Lord.
Okay. Nice quiet night. Let's see. Both of you give me perception checks.
With a +5 because of my bubble.
Yeah. Ooh.
Ooh.
32!
No, how dumb.
Math
All
is
right.
hard.
Yeah, focusing on your magic does offer a considerable amount of distraction, Samantha. But I'd say Quildor, with that incredibly high check, your senses sharpened even more so thanks to the magic of this bubble you're in. Your senses are strangely attuned to this natural surrounding. You can see, watching Kalon intently, his body sort of looks like he's finally hit the point where he looks like he's asleep with those notes in his hands, but he's actually like sort of staring into them, lost. He doesn't blink, he doesn't move. You realize he's actually trancing in this moment, having sort of lost himself in his whatever studies he was doing. And sort of looking off into the distance, once you realize he's mostly safe, he's just keeping himself in that semi-conscious state. Look up into the surrounding wilderness, down to the long flowing water. You can hear the babble of, looks like some strange flow pushing along towards some unseen river, sort of causing this, I guess like a small, again, it's like a puddle, like lapping further towards the grasslands. And you can see like a long ripple run across its surface. And then another ripple, and another ripple, rhythmically, over and over, until you realize you're no longer seeing it, you're almost feeling it with your incredibly sharpened elven senses. A soft, rumbling tremor in constant rhythm that seems, over the course of several minutes, grows heavier and heavier and heavier.
Walk over to Tamarkan. Tamarkan.
Yes, it's not only what?
No, something very large is just outside of the bubble.
Poke my head up over the wall and look around. Not see anything.
Look at the ripples on the water.
I peer out into the darkness.
Yep, peering out. With Cooler's aid, you do see the water seems to be tremoring. Almost looks like there's something inside of it, but then you realize it's just shaking. And you start to feel it too, with your body laying against the hardened floor, the soft sort of rumble and rumble of the earth shaking beneath your feet, growing greater in magnitude as it seems to be shaking harder and harder and harder.
Get up and start to slowly move in that direction. Do I start to feel a little tingle behind my ear?
You certainly do feel a strange tingle as you're a tiny, like almost like a shaking, as something pinned behind your ear the size of a needle seems to be not quite fully like jolting you to sense of danger, but it does seem to give you just enough tickle to know there's something approaching. And at that point, Kuldar, you can hear the sounds of rustling to the west of you. The sounds, it almost sounds like the soft wind blowing through the trees, but it's high and it's low. Sound of something shifting in the grass far away, but with every sort of almost rhythm of its own, seems to grow louder and louder and louder.
That's
Samantha,
funny.
something is out there. Wake up, Luna. Calliope.
What?
Something's coming from the water in the south, and it's coming quick. Prepare yourselves.
The bubble will
So
protect
pick
us.
up my ring.
No, it
So
won't. No, it
whisper
won't.
to Tamarkan. And something is coming from the west.
At the very least.
Awaken, little light. It seems we have work to do.
At
She
the
just
very
pats your
least-
head.
At the very least, we can
Oh gosh.
watch from my bubble, just in case.
Calliope.
Father.
Do not be worried, but something extremely large is on its way.
You just watch her immediately just fade from reality. Just fade. Just turn to water and splash, and she just, like, her eyes go wide and just...
As Persephone's going to try
Should be safe within the bubble.
to wake up Kylon, I take the notes out of his hand, not even really looking at them. Father.
He sort of blinks and comes to. What is it? What's happening?
I nod over towards the throne.
Go find a place to hide.
All right.
Preferably not to the west. Something is also out there.
Exciting.
Stephanie, I'll speak
No
to
time to talk.
Simon.
Go.
So he just immediately turns and ducks behind the throne as, at this point, all of you can feel the ground. Boom, boom.
Persephone rolls up his notes and shoves them into her bag.
As
Good though you
From the
take the west, I'll take the
So we
south.
hear it before we even see it.
oh,
I
you're
guess
hearing it.
feel
And you're, oh yeah,
Fan-
again, like
Fantastic.
yeah, you're feeling it. All of you are aware. As from the far south, it feels like the southeastern side, where the trees, almost in a similar direction where you guys came from, just slightly eastbound. You can see the trees shaking and twisting as you can hear the sounds of it sounds like maybe leather or hide scraping against bark, the sound of wood life being crushed and splintered as these massive shapes come stepping through from that end. 3 of them quite large in size. You'd think well over 15 feet. A pair of them seemingly matching in their appearance. Staying about 15 feet tall. One larger creature about 18 feet stepping ahead of them, almost leading the way, with seems to be a bright, glowing golden eye. As this thing breaks through the brush, you can see what looks to be a creature horrible in appearance. You would recognize it, at least almost innately, from the way you've heard these stories. All of you in the Prime have heard the tale of the giants, those who had once roamed the world in the era of the ancients, long since thought extinct or driven to the edge of it. Hidden in the farthest places of the world, and it seems in this far off Fae, they have wandered. And this who steps before you has a twisted, grim, grotesque-looking body, its flesh pinkened and purpled by what seems to be the touch of this strange gloom magic, swollen in places. You can't tell if they're pustules or tumors or simply misshapen muscles, as this hunched-back creature brushes and breaks off one of these smaller trees along the edge of the glade and steps forward, actually picking it up as he goes. As this thing steps forward, the last thing you see and catch is the look of a large eye, one of them hidden behind another swollen pustule, the other staring off in your direction, a bright golden glow, cut down the middle by what looks to be that of a slit pupil, like that of a cat's eye, as this massive thing comes lumbering down, feet steps splashing into the water, followed behind him. You can see similar creatures, these strange sort of glowing eyes behind him, but their bodies seem to be adorned not in these scraps of what looks to be worn hide, but truly like armor, like crafted for them. A bit more, I guess, civilized, you might say, but not in their expressions. The eyes that stare off into the darkness, you can hear chatter between them. Something probably only Samantha would have possibly understand with her recent acquisition of the language. You'd hear this sort of grunt and grind of teeth, as well as sort of bumping, and it sounds clumsy. It sounds like they're hitting the trees and walking through them rather than stepping around them, and it becomes clear why once they enter the vicinity, as these 2 pale-skinned, horn-headed, one-eyed giants follow after this larger beast, sort of looking to each other, almost tripping as they walk over some of the debris. You can hear them grunt and poof, kick a large amount of it, sending bricks flying far to the north, seemingly unaware of your presence, as they seem to be followed by these 2 strange one-eyed giants. And fortunately, in your huddled position, guarded by Persephone's magic, you avoid the gazes of the swift wind that comes from the west. You can hear the sounds of pitter-pattered footsteps cutting across the grass until it finally parts after their arrival. You can see followed behind them stranger creatures once you catch view of these things. Very familiar to you. Tiny things, only about the size, maybe smaller than a foot, a few inches tall, bouncing off the edge of grass, and even some of the plant life there, the flowers, they're so light and quick in their step, you'd almost think they weren't there, just the wind. As you would see appearing all around from a blink of an eye, these teeny tiny little creatures, armed with what looks to be small barbed twists of wood and maybe even glass and the like at their side. They're wearing like a nice ornate collar that seems to be torn and sort of like we saw before. These creatures you know as the quicklings, teeny tiny little fae who move like the wind. normally quite refined and dapper looking in their little outfits, these ones seem like they have been like lost travelers. Their outfits have been torn and ripped asunder by the surrounding plant life, and their expressions seem a bit more dire and furious as they pop up all around you guys, at least on that flanking side. Ba, 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 ba. Followed shortly, as these things do, these creatures are quite fast, but almost trying to keep pace, are a smaller bundle of similarly sized creatures, more like that akin of children. At first glance, you'd almost think them goblins. Their skin green, their eyes large and bulging, but the way they carry themselves, their hands and feet are far too large for their form, almost large enough to maybe be the size of their torso. Their heads are sort of misshapen and twisted. Upon them, they wear these sort of like what you saw with the red caps, these long, winding red, like sort of pointed caps, but they go off in multiple directions, seem torn and dirtied and asundered. I think only one of you would have ever encountered one of these creatures in his life, Tamar Khan. These things travel far and wide and are known for having quite a nasty temper. They are short in stature and shortly make up for it in their large personalities, especially when they're confronted by something that they find offensively larger to them, as you see a small band of Spriggans tearing their way from the plant life to the west, not even keeping their eyes on you well protected. Instead, they seem to be approaching the center of this ruins. As that is where we'll end this session. The sound of thunderous footsteps and shifting wind as two forces come tearing through the woods. As what's up, Tamarkan?
Can I do the thing as these things are approaching?
Go for it.
As I rouse everybody, we're all getting together. As I hold out a hand, as it seems like the grass underneath my feet, the air starts to stir around me, and somewhat resembling some magic before, but Tamarkan's not speaking any incantation, not asking for any blessing, as the small bit of energy collects in his hand, as you see the strange little mango fruit appear, but it seems relatively smaller. Luna, Persephone, I have to admit, I am excited for a bounce in the midnight hour. As you, Persephone, and Luna feel a connection. That fruity feeling in your mouth, that juicy feeling, but you can feel the connection between us, emboldened. As I cast some emboldening bond.
Hey.
Magic
As you
of
feel,
friendship.
you feel safety within each other's presence.
The safety is shaken but not
Luna
broken.
shoots away. Ew!
As the ground shakes, and it seems as if a place of respite, even though their eyes do not fall upon you, it seems you're still kept well hidden within your bubble. It becomes something of a meeting ground, perhaps a battleground, perhaps a turf war between these two differently sized creatures now breaking into view. As indeed, that is where we will end tonight's session, with the Valiant Vanguard on the cusp of what seems to be a dangerous battle.
Accidentally
Oh,
moved your
boy.
bubble a little bit.
Front row seats to a Fae fight.
Hmm. Should be.
Hey.
Later, y'all.
Toodles.
Bye.
Wash your hands. Wear your mask. Do it.
It ain't over yet, baby.
Fucking do it.
But does Daria also do this?
One person at a time to be traveling through.
Okay, so like, but like, a medium-sized creature would be fine to go through it, right?
Yeah, I would
Welcome.
say. Oh, are you okay?
Alright.
You'd be able to tell that like a large creature would have a really hard time getting through here. Anything medium or smaller would be fine.
Okay. It's spider time again, guys.
Yay!
There's gonna be a giant wolf spider again.
Yeah, right.
Because why not?
Okay.
I'd like to give a welcome to the Raiders that just joined.
Yeah,
Oh, is there another one? I'm sorry I missed it. Welcome,
With
Raiders.
9 viewers.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry I missed that.
Lovely
Thank you.
Gaming. Yeah, I have so many tabs open.
Spider-Wolf does whatever Spider-Wolf can. Oh my
Okay, so we got a whole bunch of stuff happening sort of all at the same time. I'm sorry if this seems like a delayed response. So,
Yes.
just to make sure I have it straight, Juno, you were up first, correct?
Yep, she's climbing, and she's climbing with Moonbeam prepared.
Oh, so you're concentrating on it. Okay.
She's
Like
she's
readying the
getting
action?
ready to unleash
Well,
it. Yeah,
that has the spell like basically cast, and you're holding it.
So